How does seller concessions work, and is even a possibility that you're going to have to deal with it in this market? We're going to dive into that today, but first, my name's Alisia Krastel, and on this channel, we talk all about real estate, building your business, and helping people navigate the market. If that's what you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you get notified anytime I release a video. This is an update to this video that I made in 2019 that talks all about seller contribution, how it works, and how to make it a win-win in negotiations. So how does it work now that we're 2 years into a pandemic and a crazy housing market? The way it functions is basically the same. A buyer can ask for a seller contribution, which is money toward their closing costs at the initial negotiation on their contract, or at inspection if they're having one. If there are repairs that to be made, the buyer can ask for a seller contribution or concession instead of having those repairs made. To show you how that breaks down is if a buyer offers $310,000 on a property that's worth $300,000, their net offer now becomes $300,000, and the buyer is essentially financing that $10,000 into their loan. The seller isn't actually paying the buyer anything, but the seller has to agree because the house has to appraise for that high amount, that $310,000, which would be the purchase price. If it happens at inspection time, that's just the buyer, seller, agents working out what amount of money makes sense for the repairs that they're requesting. It's all negotiable. In 2019, it was very common to see a seller contribution on a contract and a seller being willing and ready to accept that and be part of that scenario. When the housing market just went crazy on fire and we had multiple offers, you can see where an offer that's $310,000 with seller contribution of $10,000, it cannot compete because that's a net amount of $300,000, cannot quite compete with an offer that is $20,000 above list price, $320,000 with no seller contribution, because that offer is now $320,000. And with the way people are offering on homes so much over list price, the seller is less willing at that point to agree to that because they know it most likely is not going to appraise. It's a real risk for them to accept an offer from a buyer that's $40,000 over list price, and then they're asking for $10,000 back in closing if that house isn't really going to appraise. So if you or your buyer are looking in the hottest neighborhood in your market, seller contribution is probably not going to happen. You never say never, right? But if you're banking on it, it's going to be an uphill battle for you. Where I think the opportunity is for you if you do need seller contribution or if you're working with buyers who need it is to look at houses that have been on the market for a couple of weeks or homes that have reduced their price. And the third area I think we can look for some seller contribution is if you're seeing a consistency in past sales where people have gotten seller contribution, that's a better opportunity for you if that's what you really need. And yes, there might be grant opportunities or down payment assistance that could go into any of these scenarios depending on where you live. Let me know below if you're an agent, a buyer, or a seller watching the video today, and what part of the country are you in? One of the key factors that's going to play into whether a seller contribution is part of a deal or not is what's the demand on that market, on that very specific market, because where I am, you may not ever get seller contribution. It might not happen at all. But 15 miles down the road where there's a little less competition and instead of 30, 40 offers on a home, we might be getting 5 or 10, and they can be from all people offering seller contribution to no seller contribution with all different loan types in between. An agent's going to know that. And in the video I mentioned, I talk all about the questions you can ask the listing agent to help give you an advantage and really make it a win for the seller and the buyer. An offer has so many elements to it. It's not just price. So really you have to really carefully craft your offer to make it most appealing for that individual seller. And I can't emphasize enough that that seller can be very different than one down the street. One might say, never ever will I ever do seller contribution. That's just not what I do. And another one might be open to it if all the other terms are great. And also where you're looking. If the demand is extremely high in one zip code and very low in another, your likelihood of seller contribution will be way better in the housing market that has very little demand. I would consider someone in this market to be lucky to get a seller contribution, but I am seeing them. At the height of the market, I was seeing none, and now I'm seeing a handful here and there, but it's not something I think anyone can expect. If you need help finding an agent in your area, I know agents all across the country. I have relationships just message me and I'm happy to help refer you to a great agent. If you want to know all the disadvantages of seller contribution, there's a video I made right here about all of those. I'm licensed in Maryland, so I can help you with any of your Maryland questions. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified next time I make a video.